The courtroom froze the moment the rich teen stepped inside, swagger loud, ego louder. But what detonated the room wasn't his entrance. It was the way he stared straight at the white-bearded judge and burst into mocking laughter. A single arrogant laugh that would soon cost him far more than he imagined. The courtroom didn't just fall silent, it transformed. The air thickened. Every heartbeat in the room felt like it echoed against the walls. No one knew exactly why tension crawled up their spines, but they felt it. Something about this hearing, this boy, and this cold, unmoving judge promised a collision. And then the double doors burst open. The teen didn't walk in. He performed an entrance. A slow, cocky glide down the aisle, chin up, designer shoes tapping as if announcing his arrival. His jacket, more expensive than most people's cars, shimmered under the fluorescent lights. His hair was slicked, styled, sculpted. He didn't look like a defendant. He looked like someone attending a red carpet event. People whispered, "Is that him? That's the kid. He looks proud." And no, he was. The rich teen carried himself like the courtroom was nothing more than an inconvenience, another building his father's money could buy. He lifted his gaze and locked eyes with the judge. The judge, a tall, white-bearded man known across the state for being calm, stern, and absolutely unshakable, didn't move. He didn't blink. He didn't even shift in his seat. He simply watched the teen approach, his face carved from stone. And that's when it happened. A grin spread across the teen's face, slow and poisonous. Then a breath. Then a chuckle. Then a full, exploding laugh. Mocking, loud, echoing. A sound so disrespectful that even seasoned officers stiffened. But the judge remained still, as if he had been expecting this arrogance. The teen, amused by the silence he created, whispered, "Relax. It's just a court." He smirked and slid into his seat like he was collapsing onto a velvet couch. The attorneys exchanged glances, unsure whether to hide their frustration or their shock. His parents sat behind him, embarrassed but silent. They were used to cleaning up the mess he created. The judge finally lifted his gaze and spoke, not loudly, but with a weight that made everyone straighten. "Mr. Colton," he said slowly, "before we begin, do you understand why you're here?" The teen shrugged lazily. "Yeah, a misunderstanding. A joke taken too seriously." A few people inhaled sharply. The judge didn't. He simply tapped a finger on the bench. Once, then opened a sealed folder with the kind of precision surgeons use. Inside was a small USB drive. He placed it on the bench, slid it forward slightly, and said, "We'll start with this." The teen raised his eyebrows. "That? Seriously? What is it, a TikTok video?" The judge didn't answer. He angled his head toward the bailiff, who took the USB and plugged it into the system. The lights dimmed slightly. The screen flickered. The teen leaned back, yawning dramatically. Then the footage appeared. A grainy, hidden camera shot. The teen's voice filled the room. "Okay, guys, listen. This prank's gonna be insane. We're gonna make him cry for real. And trust me, nobody's gonna believe him even if he tells." His smirk vanished. Instantly, he leaned forward, eyes narrowing, tried to understand what he was seeing. That recording wasn't supposed to exist. He had checked every angle, every corner, every device that could have captured him. Yet here it was. The judge watched him closely. "Do you recognize the voice?" The teen swallowed. "No, that's edited or something." The judge pressed play again. There he was, clearer this time, talking about humiliating a quiet boy, planning every detail with malicious excitement. The video cut to a second clip, him bragging to friends, laughing about how rich kids don't get in trouble. The courtroom absorbed every second, every word, every ounce of cruelty. His parents froze behind him, unable to blink. The judge folded his hands. "Harmless fun, you said?" The teen's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The judge continued, "This is only the first file." The boy's stomach dropped. He knew exactly what that meant. One recording wasn't the issue. The existence of recordings was. His face slowly drained of color. The judge nodded again at the bailiff. More files appeared on the screen, audio clips of bragging, deleted messages he thought were wiped, conversations he believed were untraceable. It was a silent massacre of his confidence. For the first time, The courtroom saw fear in his eyes. A shift happened. His posture changed. He sat straighter. He clasped his hands. He didn't smile. Then the judge spoke again. "You laughed when you walked in because you thought your privilege protected you." The teen tightened his jaw. But here, the judge continued, tapping the bench softly. "Your last name does not shield you." The courtroom felt the shift like pressure in the air before a storm. The prosecution stood. "Your Honor, permission to call the first witness." The judge nodded. A teacher stepped forward, someone who had watched the teen for years. She spoke softly but firmly, explaining the pattern: bullying, intimidation, manipulation, silence, and force through money or fear. Every word chipped away at the teen's arrogance. Then another witness, and another. Each revealed a layer he had hidden, or thought he had hidden. Whispers filled the gallery. His parents' hands trembled. His attorney wiped his forehead. Finally, the judge leaned forward. "This hearing," he paused, letting the silence breathe, "is not about a prank. This is about character." The teen shifted, suddenly aware of how small he looked in a room he thought he controlled. For the first time in his life, he wasn't the one holding power. He glanced toward his parents, but they looked away. The judge closed the folder slowly. "We're not finished. Not even close." He opened another sealed folder, different, heavier. The teen's breath hitched. "This," the judge said, "is the second part of the evidence. And what it contains will determine whether your life moves forward or collapses." The courtroom leaned in. Every inch of the atmosphere stretched thin. The judge didn't read it yet. He simply held it up. The teen felt something unfamiliar. Regret? Fear? Guilt? Whatever it was, it silenced him completely. His laugh, the one that started it all, felt like a curse now. The judge lowered the document. "We continue in the next phase." The gavel struck once, and that single sound marked the beginning of the end of the boy who walked in laughing. The gavel's echo still hung in the air when the courtroom shifted into a strange kind of stillness, a stillness that didn't feel empty, but charged. Everyone in the room sensed the same thing. The first round was over, but the real storm hadn't even started. The teen, who once walked in laughing, now sat tensely, jaw tight, hands fidgeting with the edge of the table. He stared at that second sealed folder, fat, ominous, impossible to ignore. His thoughts raced in spirals. What else do they have? Who else talked? What's in that file? His attorney leaned toward him. "We'll handle whatever's next," he whispered, but his tone lacked conviction. There was no plan. There was no strategy. Not when the judge had blindsided them with evidence they believed didn't exist. The judge returned after a brief recess, his steps measured, his expression unreadable. He adjusted his robe slightly, sat, and exhaled once, quiet, steady. Everyone stood, then sat. The teen's parents looked like two pillars cracked from the inside, barely holding themselves upright. "We will now proceed with Phase 2, the judge announced, voice deep and calm as stone cooling at night. "This portion concerns patterns, motives, and long-term behavior, not isolated incidents." The teen stiffened. That phrase, patterns, it meant history. It meant everything he thought had been buried was now on the table. The judge opened the thick envelope. Pages, dozens of them, were clipped together in a way that suggested careful assembly, not random collecting. Each sheet was a piece of a puzzle, and the judge was ready to place them one by one. He held the first page. "This document," he began, "is from a school counselor dated almost 3 years ago." The teen's stomach dropped. 3 years ago. They're reaching back? The judge read. "Student expresses ongoing anxiety triggered by a peer who repeatedly mocks, intimidates, and provokes him. Peer identified indirectly through context clues, but student refuses to state the name, fearing retaliation." Whispers rippled through the courtroom. The judge set the page down and took another. The next report, same year, different student. Similar concerns. He continued, reading excerpts from multiple reports, each painting the same picture. A bully who operated in shadows, using fear, manipulation, and social power to control those around him. The descriptions were detailed, too detailed to be coincidence. The teen clenched his fists. He couldn't look at anyone. Not the judge, not the prosecutor, not his own parents. It was like every word was peeling back a layer of his carefully constructed identity. Then the judge placed the pages down and looked forward. Patterns, Mr. Colton. That's what I see. The prosecutor rose. Your Honor, permission to introduce Exhibit K. Proceed. The screen lit up again. This time it wasn't footage. It was messages, a long thread of them. The teen recognized them instantly. His throat closed. They weren't prank messages. These were threats, disguised as jokes, but sharp as blades. Lines like, keep quiet or I'll make sure everyone remembers you the wrong way. You think anyone would believe someone like you over someone like me? You talk. I ruin you. Gasps filled the room again. A parent in the gallery whispered, this is awful, and shook her head. The teen's attorney stood quickly. Objection, Your Honor. These messages lack context, and... The judge raised a hand. The objection is noted, but overruled. The pattern speaks for itself. The boy sank deeper into his chair. His face was pale, sweat forming at his hairline. The prosecutor took a step forward. Your Honor, these messages show manipulation, coercion, and clear intent to silence others. The defendant's claim of harmless joking does not align with the documented behavior. The attorney tried to argue again, but the judge's stare silenced him. Next, the bailiff brought forward an older gentleman, one of the teen's previous teachers. He looked tired, but resolute. Please state your name, the prosecutor said. The teacher did. And your connection to the defendant? I taught him in 10th and 11th grade. Do you believe the defendant engaged in deliberate intimidation? The teacher paused, long enough to draw every eye toward him. Yes, he said softly. The teen jerked his head up. What? That's not. His attorney placed a firm hand on his arm, forcing him to sit. The judge watched every movement. The prosecutor approached the teacher. Can you explain? The teacher nodded slowly. It wasn't obvious at first. He was charming, confident. But then, I started seeing patterns. Students avoiding him. Students changing seats when he walked in. Students refusing to work with him. At first, I thought it was teenage drama. He swallowed. But then one student came to me privately. He was terrified. The room stiffened. He said the defendant threatened to humiliate him online if he didn't do his homework for him. He begged me not to tell anyone because, in his words, kids like him always get away with it. The teen flinched. The teacher continued. I reported it, but nothing came of it. The student transferred schools later that year. This time, it wasn't whispers in the gallery. It was shock, outrage, disgust. The teen suddenly felt the world tilting beneath him. For the first time, he felt shame, not because he cared, but because he couldn't escape the consequences anymore. The prosecutor approached the judge. Your Honor, the next witness is directly connected to the event in question. The judge nodded. A door opened. A small, nervous figure stepped inside. It was the quiet boy, the same one from the final witness moment in part 1. But now he looked different. Not because he was confident, but because he had decided to speak. His hands trembled, but his steps were steady. The entire courtroom leaned in. The prosecutor guided him gently. Can you tell the court what happened? The boy hesitated. His voice barely formed the first word. But then he breathed in, deep, shaky, and tried again. He made me do things I didn't want to do. The teen's eyes widened. He said it was just a joke, but he filmed it. He told me if I said anything, he'd spread it. The teen shook his head violently. No, that's not stop lying. The judge struck the gavel. You will remain silent. The boy continued, eyes fixed on his shoes. I thought he was my friend at first. He talked to me. He invited me. He made me feel like I belonged. But then he turned it into something else. Something mean. Something cruel. Tears welled in his eyes. His voice cracked, but he forced himself to keep talking. He said people like me don't matter. That nobody would believe me. That I was just someone he could use. The boy wiped his face with his sleeve. And when I cried, he laughed. Every person in the room looked horrified. Even some officers turned their faces away. The judge didn't move. His eyes remained on the teen, sharp, penetrating, unwavering. The prosecutor placed a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder. Thank you. No further questions. The defense attorney didn't even stand. He knew questioning the boy would be suicide. The judge leaned back, the leather of his chair creaking. "Mr. Colton," he said, voice calm but dangerously low, "this courtroom has now seen the truth behind your behavior." The teen clenched his jaw. "They're exaggerating." The judge ignored the outburst and continued. "You claim everything was harmless. Yet every piece of evidence points to calculated cruelty. Every witness describes fear. Every victim describes intimidation." He held up the second folder again. "And this is not even the final evidence." The teen blinked. What do you mean?" The judge nodded to the bailiff. A final file, unmarked, sealed with a red stamp, was handed over. "This," the judge said, opening it slowly, "was submitted anonymously. But the authenticity has been verified." He pulled out several photographs. The teen's face drained instantly. No one else could see them yet, but he recognized every single one. And this time, there was no way out. The judge looked at him with an expression that carried the weight of justice itself. "These images," he said, "change everything." The gallery leaned forward. The attorneys froze. The teen's pulse thundered in his ears. The judge lowered the photographs to the bench. "We will reveal them in Phase 3. He struck the gavel, and with that single strike, the room erupted. When the gavel slammed to end Phase 2, the courtroom dissolved into noise. Whispers, gasps, shifting seats, people turning to each other with wide, stunned eyes. But in the center of all that chaos, one person couldn't breathe. The teen. His fingers went numb. His chest tightened. His eyes stayed locked, glued, to the edge of the judge's bench where those photographs still lay face down. He didn't need to see them again. He already knew what they were. His attorney leaned close, voice low. "What exactly are those?" The teen didn't answer. He couldn't. His mind was sprinting through memories like a panicked animal searching for an exit, trying to recall every moment, every misstep, every cruel thing he'd done when he thought no one was watching. And as the judge returned from the recess, it became painfully clear. Someone had been watching, and someone had documented everything. Phase 3 will now begin, the judge announced, voice steady and resonant even above the lingering murmurs. People quieted instantly. The teen's mother squeezed his father's hand. His father sat stiff as iron, face flint-hard, jaw pulsing with regret and anger he was trying to hide. But even he couldn't look at his son directly. The judge lifted the folder again. He didn't look triumphant. He didn't look eager. He looked disappointed, not at the evidence, not at the witnesses, but at the boy who once walked him laughing. This final set of materials, the judge said, was submitted anonymously, but the sender verified their identity privately, and the authenticity has been confirmed through metadata analysis. The teen swallowed, throat dry. Metadata meant timestamps. Timestamps meant proof. The judge held up the first photograph. The courtroom collectively inhaled. In the image, the teen was standing behind a crying student, one who looked half his size. The teen was smirking, holding the student's backpack over a toilet in the school restroom. The student's eyes were red, wet, terrified. The teen's expression in the photo? Cruel amusement, joy. The judge didn't show anger. He simply let the image speak. The prosecutor stepped forward. This photo was taken 18 months ago. No one saw it then, and the victim refused to file a report. She paused. He was afraid. The teen felt the room turning heavier, as if oxygen had thickened. His stomach twisted as the judge set the photo down and lifted another. This one was worse. It showed the teen pushing a student, a different one, against a row of lockers. The victim's hands were raised defensively, clearly startled. The teen's face was inches away, lips curled in a threatening whisper. The prosecutor spoke again. This student transferred out 2 weeks after this incident. The gallery began murmuring again. Someone whispered, "How many kids did he do this to?" The judge raised a hand, silencing them. The next photo emerged. It was grainier, taken from farther away, but unmistakable. The teen laughing, pointing a phone at a group of younger students who were cleaning up a mess spilled across the cafeteria floor. A mess he had apparently created. Overlaid text he clearly added for his private group chat. Read, "Make the little losers work for it." The teen shut his eyes hard. He wished it was to block the image from everyone else, but no. He wished it was to block it from himself. but it was too late for that. Your Honor, the defense attorney finally spoke, desperate. These are isolated, out-of-context moments. The judge turned to him slowly. Counselor, how many isolated incidents does it take to form a pattern? The attorney froze. He couldn't answer. The prosecutor stepped forward again. And there's more. The judge raised the next photograph. But this one wasn't an image. It was a screenshot, a private message from the teen, sent late at night to someone whose name was blurred for privacy. The message read, "Trust me, nobody's going to believe a quiet nobody over me. I could do whatever I want. They're scared of me." A ripple of horror passed through the room. The prosecutor's voice sharpened. This message establishes motive, intent, and awareness of wrongdoing. The teen snapped. That message was a joke. The judge's eyes locked on him. "You will not interrupt again." The teen felt himself shrinking in his seat. The judge placed the screenshot down, then slowly lifted the final piece. A video thumbnail. The teen's heart nearly broke through his ribs. A shaky camera. A dim hallway. A student cowering while the teen towered above him, pointing and laughing. They hadn't seen the video yet, just a thumbnail. But the thumbnail alone made half the courtroom recoil. The prosecutor nodded to the bailiff. "Your Honor, with your permission." The judge hesitated, not because he doubted the evidence, but because he understood the weight of what was coming. Finally, he said, "Proceed." The bailiff connected the device. The lights dimmed. The screen lit up. The video began. The hallway was narrow, lockers on both sides. The teen stood in the center, blocking the path of smaller boy. The smaller boy clutched his books desperately against his chest. The teen leaned in, sneering. "You think you could just walk here? Where do you think you're going, buddy?" The boy didn't speak. "You hear me?" the teen demanded, stepping closer. Still no answer. Then the teen slapped the books out of the boy's hands. They scattered across the floor. The boy bent down quickly, scrambling to pick them up, but the teen kicked them farther away. The teen laughed with the same arrogance he brought into the courtroom today. The sound echoed through the speakers. Cold, heartless, familiar. The video continued with the teen calling the boy names, taunting him, telling him he's worthless, telling him no one likes him, telling him he should be grateful anyone even notices he exists. The courtroom sat frozen. Even the teen's parents had tears gathering in their eyes. Not because of punishment, but because they were seeing a version of their son they never wanted to believe existed. The video ended abruptly. Silence. Long, painful, suffocating silence. The judge leaned back slowly. He didn't speak right away. The teen, trembling now, whispered under his breath, "This is bad, this is so bad." But it wasn't just bad. It was damning. The judge finally broke the silence. "Mr. Colton," he said, voice deeper than before, "do you have anything to say?" The teen's mouth opened, but nothing came out. For the first time in his life, he had no excuses, no jokes, no way to twist the narrative, no arrogant laughter to hide behind. There was only the truth, and it was staring him in the face. He swallowed hard. I didn't think they would. I didn't mean... But the judge raised a hand, stopping him. Intention does not erase impact. He placed the video file aside and folded his hands. "This phase," the judge said slowly, "reveals more than what you've done. It reveals who you chose to be when you thought no one was watching." The teen's throat tightened painfully. The judge continued, "It is clear that your actions were not accidents. They were choices, repeated choices, consistent choices. Choices rooted in arrogance and a belief that you were above consequence." The courtroom listened in breathless silence. And now, the judge said, taking a deep, steady breath, "We move to phase 4. The teen's eyes widened. "Phase 4. The judge nodded. "Yes, the phase where consequences begin." The gavel struck. The sound echoed like a hammer hitting bone. And the teen realized the worst had not happened yet. The worst was just beginning. When the gavel cracked through the courtroom, the teen flinched so hard it looked like someone had struck him. His breathing grew shallow, his palms slick with sweat, his throat nearly closing. Phase 4. The phase his attorney had warned him about in whispers before the hearing. The phase nobody could protect him from. The phase where his past stopped being a set of stories. and became a sentence. The gallery stiffened with anticipation. Even those who had felt sympathy earlier were now stone-faced, their expressions hardened by the images and video burned into their minds. The judge leaned forward, elbows on the bench, fingers interlaced. There was no anger on his face, which made it worse. Real punishment rarely arrived with fury. It arrived with clarity. "Stand," the judge said. The teen rose awkwardly, knees trembling so badly the table beside him shook. His parents rose behind him, his mother wiping tears that wouldn't stop, his father frozen with a look that wasn't disappointment. It was heartbreak. The judge exhaled deeply, as if gathering the weight of every fact, every image, every testimony, and compressing it into the next words. "Before I issue my decision," the judge said, "I want to make something clear. This is not solely about the events of one day. It is about the cumulative impact of your choices." The teen stared at the floor. He felt like he was shrinking, collapsing inward. The judge continued, "You did not bully once. You did not intimidate once. You did not threaten once. You established a pattern of fear, a pattern that followed multiple students multiple years." The teen's breath hitched, barely audible. The judge looked toward the parents. "And I do not blame your family. Parents cannot control every second of a child's behavior, but they can set expectations. And it appears those expectations were either ignored or never enforced." His father closed his eyes, shoulders shaking. The teen's voice cracked. "Dad, His father didn't look at him. The judge held up a hand, silencing the moment. "I have reviewed every statement, every file, every message. But I want to hear one thing directly from you." The judge leaned forward. "In your own words, why did you do it?" The teen swallowed hard. His legs nearly gave out. I don't know," he whispered. "Not good enough," the judge said, tone calm but cutting. "Try again." The teen squeezed his eyes shut. It felt like the world was dissolving around him. He forced the words out, voice trembling. I wanted people to respect me." "By harming others?" the judge asked. The teen winced. "No, I didn't think it was that bad. I thought they were just jokes. I didn't think they'd take it so seriously." The judge's eyes hardened slightly. "Did any of them look like they were laughing?" The teen shook his head slowly. "No," he whispered. "Then who was the joke for?" the judge asked. The teen couldn't answer, because there was only one truthful answer: himself. The judge let the silence stretch, forcing the teen to sit with his own realization. Then the judge shifted the tone, not colder but heavier. "Let me explain something to you, Mr. Colton. Respect is not taken. Fear can be taken, yes, but respect must be earned. And what you created was not respect, it was trauma." The teen winced again, tears threatening. He hated the word trauma. He never imagined he could cause something like that. The judge stood. Everyone in the courtroom straightened instinctively. "This court hereby finds the defendant responsible for the violations presented. Because of his age, sentencing is not about destruction. It is about correction." The prosecutor nodded firmly. The defense attorney looked relieved merely to hear the word correction. The teen looked up with fragile hope. But the judge wasn't finished. "Correction," he repeated, "does not mean leniency." He lifted a document from the bench. "As of this moment, Mr. Colton, you will be placed under the following mandatory conditions." The teen tightened his grip on the edge of the table. His fate was about to be spoken aloud. The judge read the first line. "You will be removed from your current school immediately." A quiet gasp rippled through the gallery. The teen's heart dropped into his stomach. Transfer meant losing everything: friends, reputation, sports, teachers, his entire social world. "You will attend a supervised behavioral program for a minimum of 12 weeks, the judge continued. "Attendance will be mandatory. Completion will be verified." The teen drew a shaky breath. 12 weeks. 3 months. That alone felt like eternity. But the judge wasn't done. "You will also be required to participate in weekly counseling sessions with an accredited therapist specializing in aggression and impulse control." His mother sobbed quietly. His father placed a hand on her shoulder, though his own fingers were trembling. "And finally," the judge said, lifting the last document, You will be required to conduct 120 hours of community service, specifically in environments where empathy and responsibility are essential. That one hit hardest, because he knew exactly what that meant. Working with younger kids, volunteering with students he once mocked, participating in anti-bullying programs, cleaning campuses, helping staff members. A spotlight on his shame. The teen whispered, voice breaking, Is that all?" The judge looked directly at him, eyes steady, unblinking. "No," he said. "There is one more condition." The teen stiffened. His attorney leaned forward nervously. Even the prosecutor tilted her head slightly, unsure what was coming. The judge placed both hands on the bench. "You will write a letter," he said slowly, "to each victim." The teen's breath caught in his chest. "This letter will not be written today. It will not be written tomorrow. It will be written only after your therapy sessions begin, after you learn how to see other people as human beings rather than obstacles." The teen felt tears finally spilled down his cheeks. "You will explain what you did. You will acknowledge their pain. And you will apologize sincerely, not to satisfy this courtroom, but to confront yourself." The teen wiped his face, but the tears kept coming. His voice cracked. I don't know if I can do that." That, the judge said softly, "is exactly why you must." Silence settled again, heavy and suffocating. The judge then shifted his focus to the gallery. "To the families who submitted evidence, I commend your courage. To the victims who chose not to appear today, your voices were heard through the proof you entrusted to this court." He paused. "And to all those who watched this young man's arrogance at the beginning of these proceedings, I want you to see the difference between confidence and accountability." He turned back to the teen. "You will serve these conditions in full. Failure to comply with any part will result in immediate escalation to a juvenile detention facility." The teen's knees buckled. His attorney grabbed his arm to keep him from collapsing. The judge's voice softened just slightly. "You have a chance here, Mr. Colton. A chance that many never receive. The question now is simple. What will you do with it?" The teen swallowed through the tears. I'll try," he whispered. The judge nodded once, firm, then turned to the bailiff. "We will now finalize the written order." The bailiff approached the bench. The teen finally sank into his seat, shaking uncontrollably. His parents sat beside him, his mother reaching for his hand with a gentleness he didn't deserve, his father staring straight ahead, lost in his own storm. The prosecutor gathered her files. The defense attorney whispered instructions, but the teen heard none of it. He was staring at the blank table in front of him, his face wet, chest rising and falling in shaky breaths. For the first time in his life, he felt small, really, truly, unbearably small. Phase 4 wasn't about punishment. It was about realization, and realization hurt worse than anything. As the judge prepared to deliver the final closing statement, the teen looked up, eyes red, voice barely a whisper. "Is it over?" The judge looked at him with a gaze that wasn't harsh anymore, just human. "No," he said gently. "It's not over." He paused. "It's just beginning." The courtroom sat in a heavy silence as Phase 4 concluded, yet nobody moved. The air felt thicker, almost oppressive. The teen's hands trembled, and even the seasoned officers seemed to lean forward, drawn into a gravity they hadn't anticipated. This was more than punishment. It was a reckoning, a forced confrontation with every choice he had made. The judge adjusted his glasses, leaning forward so his gaze pierced the room. "We now enter Phase 5, he said, voice measured, carrying the weight of years of experience and unwavering authority. "This phase is not about documents, videos, or even testimony. It is about reflection, accountability, and the final confrontation with reality." The teen's stomach tightened. He had thought the consequences were steep before, but Phase 5 promised something far deeper, something internal, unavoidable, and undeniable. He could no longer hide behind arrogance, excuses, or privilege. Everything would be exposed, not just his actions, but the person he had chosen to be. The bailiff stepped forward with the final envelope. It was heavier than the previous folders. The red wax seal bore a symbol of authority, and the room collectively held its breath as the judge broke it. Inside were letters, photos, audio files, and detailed reports. Some official, some submitted anonymously. But every single item bore one truth. It chronicled the teen's history of intimidation, manipulation, and cruelty in vivid, undeniable detail. The judge laid the documents on the bench. "These materials," he said, "reflect both intention and impact. They are the culmination of years of actions, choices, and behaviors you thought could be hidden. They cannot be erased. They cannot be ignored. They exist, and they must be confronted." The teen swallowed hard, his throat dry. He had no words. His lawyer attempted a weak defense, but the judge's gaze silenced him immediately. There would be no twisting reality in this face. There would be no denial. First, the judge continued, "Let us review the timeline." He tapped the bench lightly, and the screen illuminated with a chronological sequence of events spanning years. Videos, images, messages, and reports appeared one by one. Each revealed deliberate actions, each exposing not a momentary lapse, but a pattern of calculated behavior. The teen's smirk, once so natural, dissolved entirely. The judge paused on one particularly damning photo. The teen surrounded by peers, each expression a mixture of fear and resignation, while he grinned triumphantly. The gallery reacted audibly, a collective gasp. Even those who had only known him by reputation felt the weight of his actions through that single image. "Do you understand, Mr. Colton," the judge said, voice low but precise, "that this is the cumulative evidence against you?" The teen nodded shakily. "Yes," he whispered. "And yet," the judge said, lifting a hand, "understanding is not enough. Awareness without action is meaningless. The question before you now is how you choose to respond." A hush fell over the courtroom. The teen's parents exchanged glances, his mother trembling, his father silent, but eyes glistening. Even the officers and gallery members leaned forward, sensing the gravity of what was about to unfold. The judge motioned to the bailiff, who brought forward a laptop. "We will review one final recording," the judge said. "It is the most revealing, not because it shows your actions, but because it captures your intent." The video began to play. It was a recording from a group chat, audio and visual footage combined. The teen's voice was unmistakable, confident, arrogant, unrepentant. He spoke to his peers about targeting a student for humiliation, laughing as if it were sport. He detailed strategies for intimidation, mocking authority figures who might intervene, and celebrating the power imbalance he had created. The courtroom absorbed every second. The teen's parents covered their mouths in disbelief, unable to reconcile this version of their son with the boy they thought they knew. The judge watched closely, allowing every moment to sink in. When the video ended, the teen's face was pale, lips trembling. For the first time, he felt the full weight of exposure, not just of his actions, but of his character. This was no longer about a prank, a joke, or a single incident. It was a mirror held up to him, reflecting a version of himself that he could no longer deny. The judge leaned forward, hands folded. "Mr. Colton, you have seen what has been documented, corroborated, and submitted. You have heard witnesses, reviewed records, and now observed your own words and actions. Do you understand the severity of what you have done?" The teen nodded, his voice barely audible. "Yes, Your Honor." Then, the judge said, "Let us consider the path forward. Justice is not served solely through punishment. It is served through accountability, understanding, and transformation. Your sentence, therefore, will include both corrective and restorative measures." The judge began to outline the conditions. Immediate transfer to a supervised educational environment specializing in behavioral rehabilitation. Mandatory counseling focusing on empathy, impulse control, and understanding the impact of one's actions on others. Restorative justice sessions with victims, including apologies and reconciliation under guided supervision. Community service, including mentorship and work with younger students in settings designed to cultivate responsibility and compassion. Continuous oversight by probationary and educational authorities to ensure full compliance and measure progress. The teen listened, pale and silent, every word striking him with increasing intensity. This was no longer a hypothetical threat. This was real, Immediate, permanent. The judge then added the final, most consequential stipulation. You will submit a reflective report weekly for the next 3 months, documenting your progress, insights, and acknowledgement of your actions. Failure to comply will result in escalation to secure juvenile detention and potential long-term legal consequences. The teen's body stiffened. His mouth opened as if to argue, but the gavel struck sharply. Silence returned, heavier than before. Phase 5, the judge said slowly, voice low but resonant, is not about ending your life in this courtroom. It is about ensuring that you emerge from this experience as someone capable of understanding responsibility, empathy, and the consequences of your actions. If you succeed, you may reclaim a life of choice and trust. If you fail, the system will act accordingly. The teen's eyes filled with tears. He looked at his parents, then back at the judge, and finally down at the floor. He had no arrogance left, no smirk to hide behind. He had nothing but the stark, undeniable truth. The prosecutor nodded approvingly, signaling that the court had done its work. The defense attorney quietly closed his folder, finally accepting the impossibility of defending arrogance against reality. The judge rose, towering above the bench, and addressed the courtroom one last time. Let this serve as a lesson, not only to the defendant, but to all who believe privilege shields them from accountability. Actions have consequences. Patterns define character. And truth, when revealed, cannot be denied. The teen swallowed hard. Every breath felt heavier than the last. For the first time in his life, he realized that laughter, arrogance, and privilege had limits. That the world he thought he controlled was far larger and far harsher than he had imagined. The gavel struck one final time. The courtroom erupted in a controlled, respectful murmur. The teen slumped in his seat, exhausted, drained, terrified, and aware, more aware than he had ever been, of the path he now had to navigate. Phase 5 had ended, but the work, the reckoning, the real transformation had only just begun. The doors of the courtroom opened. The teen walked out, escorted by the bailiff, not with swagger, not with laughter, but with the weight of every lesson, every consequence, every truth pressing down on him. He would carry it forever. And as he stepped into the sunlight outside the courthouse, the reality settled in. This was not the end of the story. This was only the beginning of a life that could no longer escape accountability. The courthouse emptied. The gallery dispersed. But the echoes of Phase 5 remained, etched in the minds of everyone present. A cautionary tale, a brutal reality check, and a lesson in how quickly arrogance could unravel even the most seemingly untouchable. The teen walked into a world that was waiting to see if he had truly learned. And the judge, remaining behind, finally allowed a small, almost imperceptible nod. Not of victory, not of triumph, but of hope that perhaps, one day, the lesson would be understood fully. If you want to see every shocking detail unfold, the moment the teen faces the consequences, the hidden videos that changed everything, and the real-life lessons behind this courtroom showdown, hit that subscribe button now. Turn on notifications so you never miss the next jaw-dropping courtroom episode, because what happens next will leave you speechless. Don't miss it.